What you're about to hear is too intoxicating for comfort. The ancient world was high, and it built everything. Let's get into it. Number 8. The fly agaric, the mushroom that may have invented Christmas. You know this mushroom. Bright red cap, white spots. It is the most recognizable fungus on Earth. In the forests of Siberia, thousands of years ago, shamans of the Koryak, Evenki, and Chukchi peoples discovered that this mushroom, Amanita muscaria, the fly agaric, opened a door. A door to other worlds, to spirits, to the dead, to knowledge that could not be reached while sober. The shaman consumed the dried mushroom, entered a trance, and traveled, returning with diagnoses, with warnings, with guidance. Not recreation, work. Here is where it gets strange. The active compound passes through the body largely unchanged, meaning the shaman's urine was still psychoactive. Tribe members drank it to experience the effects without the mushroom's toxicity, and Arctic reindeer actively seek out fly agaric and eat it, staggering, prancing wildly. Shamans reported soul flights through the sky, guided by reindeer spirits. Which brings us to Christmas. A red and white clad figure, flying reindeer, gifts delivered through a chimney. Because in heavy Siberian snow, the door of a yurt would be blocked, and the shaman entered through the smoke hole. The mushrooms were dried near the fire, hung in stockings. This, some researchers argue, is where Santa Claus began. One more thing. The fly agaric causes a specific neurological phenomenon. Objects appear to grow and shrink unpredictably. Lewis Carroll knew these reports. In Alice in Wonderland, a caterpillar on a mushroom tells Alice one side makes her grow, the other makes her shrink. The most beloved children's book in English may be a fly agaric reference. Everything just a crazy thought experiment? One ancient civilization disagreed. We will come back to that. Number 7. Ayahuasca, the recipe the jungle whispered. Deep in the Amazon, healers called curanderos have used a brew for thousands of years to reach the parts of a person that logic and language cannot touch. Trauma held in the body for decades. Addictions that survived every other treatment. They call it ayahuasca, the vine of the dead. And those who drink it go on a journey. Ayahuasca shows you exactly what you need right now. Vivid, symbolic images that mirror what lies within. The themes that appear are not random. They are the unprocessed, the hidden, the buried. The serpent is not a coincidence here. The ayahuasca vine itself winds around trees like a snake. In the mythology of the Amazon, the serpent connects heaven and earth, carries healing, and embodies transformation, the shedding of skin, the leaving behind of what no longer belongs. But the journey is not always gentle. When trauma surfaces, the world shakes. Then the jaguar may appear, the ancient symbol of death and transformation, and something in you knows that what is dying needed to die. But not everyone sees, some only feel. Nobody knows what the journey will bring. This powerful brew is made from two plants, the ayahuasca vine and the chacruna leaf. Neither does anything alone. One contains a compound the body destroys before it reaches the brain, unless the second plant is present in precisely the right ratio, blocking that exact process. Someone found this without a laboratory, without writing, without any method science would recognize. Ask the curanderos how. The answer has never changed. The plants told us. The curanderos treat ayahuasca with a reverence that borders on the sacred. Those who wish to drink must prepare. A week before the ceremony, no sugar, no alcohol, no meat. The body must be clean before the plant is invited in. During the ceremony, most participants purge violently, la purga, the cleansing. The plant takes what no longer belongs. Today, Johns Hopkins and Imperial College London run clinical trials on this compound for depression, post-traumatic stress, and addiction. The jungle knew something we are only beginning to understand. Number 6. San Pedro. The cactus that has been listening for 4,000 years. In the coastal deserts of Peru, a cactus grows 6 meters tall, a few centimeters a year, as if it has no particular hurry. The San Pedro cactus has been used in healing ceremonies for at least 4,000 years. Ceramic vessels depicting it date to 2200 BC. The cactus contains mescaline, a compound that produces one of the most distinctive altered states in pharmacology. Unlike the overwhelming intensity of ayahuasca, San Pedro is described as an opening, a slow, expanding awareness that makes the world appear more real, not less. Colors deepen, connections become visible. For the Andean curanderos, it is a lens, one that reveals what illness hides and brings what is buried to light. The ceremonies take place at night, in the mountains, under open sky. The cactus is prepared slowly, boiled for hours. By the time it is ready, the stars are out. And here is something nobody mentions. San Pedro contains mescaline, the same active compound as peyote. Two completely different cacti, two different civilizations, thousands of kilometers apart, and the same molecule. Nature, it seems, found the same answer twice. The Spanish missionaries called it the devil's cactus and tried to suppress it. The curanderos continued, as they had for millennia. The oldest ritual in the Americas was never stopped. The curanderos simply outlasted everyone who tried. What comes next gets stranger and darker. A plant that made warriors unstoppable, a flower that unlocked the divine, and a fungus that may have built Western philosophy and burned witches. Number 5. Peyote. 5,000 years of listening. Forget what you think you know about psychedelics. No festivals, no counterculture. 5,000 years ago, in the desert of what is now northern Mexico, the Huichol people found a small, spineless cactus growing flat against the earth. What they built around it was not a habit, it was a religion. In Huichol understanding, the peyote cactus, the deer, and the corn are one sacred being in 3 forms. To take peyote is not to escape reality, it is to see it more completely, through over 60 psychoactive compounds working in concert. Not one substance, an entire orchestra. Every year, the Huichol walk hundreds of kilometers to the high desert in ritual silence. No shoes on sacred ground. The desert sun on bare skin. The silence so complete that the only sound is breathing. When the first cactus appears, the group stops and greets it as an ancestor. In 1620, the Spanish Inquisition formally banned peyote. The Huichol continued in secret and are still making this pilgrimage today. 400 years of the most powerful institution in the West saying, stop. Some things are simply too old to ban. Number 4. Blue lotus, the flower that opened every door. You arrive at a feast in ancient Egypt. A servant holds out a blue flower. You have seen it everywhere, on tomb walls, above temple doorways, in every banquet scene from 1,000 years of Egyptian art. You hold it to your nose. Within the hour, the world slows down and lights up at the same time. Soaked overnight in wine, the effect deepens. When Howard Carter opened Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, dried blue lotus petals lay scattered across the mummy. 3,000 years in the dark, and still recognizable, still blue. The flower closes each night, opens at dawn, symbol of divine rebirth, served at every party. The Egyptians understood something we keep trying to separate. The sacred and the pleasurable were the same thing. Blue lotus is still completely legal almost everywhere on Earth. You can order it on Amazon today. The favorite party drug of the pharaohs ships in 2 days. What comes last? Built philosophy and gallows. Number 3. Henbane, the plant that replaced reality. Norse sagas describe the berserkers with one detail that separates them from every other warrior in history. They could not be stopped. Wounds that should have ended them did not. They felt no fear, no pain. Their eyes tracked something no one else could see. Henbane does not alter perception. It removes it entirely and constructs a different one, fully formed, indistinguishable from real. Henbane seeds have been found in Viking burial sites. Across every culture that used this plant, one effect appeared consistently: the overwhelming sensation of flying. Medieval accounts describe women applying henbane preparations to the skin with a wooden implement, and afterward reporting they soared through the air. The sensation became the legend. The implement became the broomstick. One plant, one sensation, leaving the ground. It made the most feared warriors of the medieval world, and the witch on her broomstick. Same flight, completely different story. Number 2. Opium. 4,000 years of not asking questions. The Sumerians called it Hul Gil, joy plant, 3400 BC. The knowledge passed through every civilization that followed: Assyrian, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, like something too good to question. Egyptian mothers rubbed opium paste on their babies' gums to stop them crying. Physicians used it for surgery, for grief, for everything. The Greek god of dreams was named Morpheus. We get the word morphine from him. In Rome, Emperor Marcus Aurelius, one of the most celebrated minds in human history, took opium every evening on his physician's orders. He wrote the Meditations in those evenings, the book that teaches equanimity in the face of suffering, written by a man in an opiate haze. For 4,000 years, none of this was hidden or considered a crisis. The 19th century looked back and decided it was a problem. Maybe it was. Or maybe the problem was not the drug. Maybe the problem was the century that turned the drug into a problem. Number 1. Ergot, the fungus that built philosophy and burned witches. It grows on rye, replacing the kernel with a dark, curved body, purplish-black, easy to miss, easy to grind into flour unnoticed. In large doses, convulsions, rotting limbs, death. In small, controlled doses, something entirely different happens. Ergot contains lysergic acid, the precursor Albert Hofmann used in 1938 to synthesize LSD. But the story begins much earlier. For nearly 2,000 years, tens of thousands journeyed to Eleusis, outside Athens. They fasted, drank a beverage called the kykeon, and experienced something so profound they were bound, on pain of death, never to describe it. Plato went. Aristotle went. Cicero returned and wrote that Eleusis had taught him not merely how to live, but how to die. In 1978, Hofmann himself proposed the kykeon contained ergot extract, that the priests had isolated the compounds centuries before modern chemistry. If correct, the minds behind Plato's theory of forms had been, at least once, somewhere else entirely. Salem, Massachusetts, 1692. Young women convulsing, screaming about tormentors no one else can see. 20 people executed for witchcraft. Researcher Linda Caporail examined the crop records. That year's rye had grown in warm, wet conditions, ideal for ergot. The symptoms matched almost perfectly. One fungus, invisible in the flour, may have produced civilization's deepest ideas and taken 20 innocent lives. Nobody thought to look at the bread.